Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist. I own 54 units of real estate. So today I want to give an update on my 20 unit apartment complex that got hit the hardest by the recession. This property is performing the worst out of all of them, and so I can give some context about the deal. So I bought this 20 unit in May of 2022 off market using my direct mail campaign. It was an out-of-state owner who I guess wasn't really managing that well, and he wanted to sell it at the tax assessed price. And typically the tax assessed price is going to be a good price. It's not overpriced, it's going to be reasonable, and typically it's going to be under market value. So at the time, it's public record. So you just search the address, you search the county assessor's office, I believe it was in Garfield County, and it ended up being about $415K. So what I did was I got the $450K price in mind, and I asked for the T12, which is the profit and loss statement for the past 12 months, and a recent rent roll, and basically got that over to my lender. And my typical lenders, so BMO denied it, a bunch of under lenders and brokers I shot the deal to didn't like the deal. So I actually started engaging hard money lenders, and I engaged at least 10 hard money lenders because this project needed a lot of renovation. There's one unit that was burned down 5 years ago. The owner never repaired it, so I was going to have to repair that. The average rents were probably $350, and I knew the market rents would be closer to $500 to $550 after renovation. And so I basically engaged multiple hard money lenders and eventually said, hey, I got pre-approved for $350K, which was $75K less than what he wanted, but I submitted the offer with my pre-approval letter, and then he ended up accepting the deal because he wanted out of the deal. He didn't want to seller finance the deal. He just wanted the money to go funneled through his business. And this is very common in apartments, where people buy apartments because they just want a tax write-off against their business income. Probably a CPA told them that, and that's why they own real estate. So I ended up getting the deal for $350. I spent around, I believe, $120 to $150 to renovate the deal. So I'm all in for like $500,000. And I think it only appraised at around $520, because at that point, this was July of 2023, and that's when interest rates went up, which, rapidly at that time, and that meant that cap rates went up. So they're valuing that property at a 10 cap. So I had about a $52K NOI. So that's income minus expense. It was $52K. And I think it was like 90% occupied at the time. They underwrote it at 85% occupancy. And if you take 52K NOI divided by 10 cap, your value is $520K. And they allowed me to do 75% cash out refinance. So I ended up leaving, I think, about $80,000 in the deal. And my interest rate was 6.5% back in 2023. I got a 10-year balloon, 30-year amortized. So my monthly payment's about $2,600 a month. So this property wasn't the greatest deal to start with. I think at its peak, I was probably cash flowing about $1,500 to $2,000 a month. And that's not factoring in, reserves and whatnot. So it wasn't the greatest deal to begin with, even during the peak. But during the recession and recently, it's been doing worse. And it could be multifactorial. It could be because maybe I got complacent with following my property manager on a monthly basis. So I used to have monthly calls or touch bases. And since it's been doing pretty decent, and I was just like focused on like my personal life, if I'm being honest, and we get complacent. It's human nature. I haven't been following up as diligently once a month. Like maybe I'll peep in like maybe once every 2 months, once every 3 months, but I haven't been doing monthly. So this is a reminder for even myself, where I've owned apartments for one apartment since 2021, so about 4 years. The other apartment since 2022, so about 3 years. And even I get complacent, because it's like I said, it's just human nature. And recently, I started really scrutinizing the numbers. So now, and this is something new that I adopted. Like I said, I'm still learning with you guys. Is every month now I'll have an Excel spreadsheet of all my properties, and I'll list how much money I made, and then what the expenses are. So for single family homes, it's a little bit easier to predict because you have your rent, you have your mortgage, your property tax, your insurance. The only variable is if you had a repair that month. So I know if I had a repair that month, most likely I'm negative cash flow for that single family home in California. For apartments, it's you basically get a profit and loss statement every month, and shame on me. Like for my 26 unit, they're not as diligent of sending me every month, and I don't follow up, so that's on me. But for my 20 unit, they do send it to me every month, and I do take a quick glance at it. But for my 20 unit, they do send me my distribution from the escrow account into my account, so I kind of see like how I'm doing. So for example, this month, I only got sent a distribution of $1,600, and that's negative cash flow. So that means that after my income minus my expense, I only got $1,600 left over, but that's not factoring in my mortgage of $2,600 and my insurance of $1,000. So that's $3,600. So if I still have an additional $3,600 in expenses, that means I'm negative cash flow $2,000 that month. So I went from, at the peak, $2,000 in positive cash flow to $2,000 in negative cash flow on this deal. So now it's called an alligator. So that I did a deep dive into the deal, and basically what I saw was that the occupancy was 75%. So 15 out of 20 were occupied. So I think the average rate was about 85% to 90%. So it's about 17 to 18 units should be where I'm at. So I'm basically 2 units less at $500 each. That's going to be $1,000. And then I looked at some of the expenses, and yeah, I got hit with some plumbing repairs. Welcome to C-class apartment complexes. I had to evict one tenant. Once again, the cost of doing business. So it's not doing as great this month. So it's negative $2,000. So scheduled a call with my property manager. I sent her a text and said, side tangent, like scheduled text is a game changer. Like, because I always forget to do it in the morning, but I always remember at nighttime. But you can do a scheduled text, so it comes in the morning, so you're not like being annoying and texting at nighttime. But schedule a text saying, hey, how's the property doing? Can we set up a time to discuss? I just want to talk about the occupancy in the property. So this is the first time, like I said, it wasn't the greatest deal to begin with, and now it's like getting hit and it's negative. So this is why you need reserves. And I think when I did my taxes for 2024, because you have to put in all your income, all your expenses, I think the property was a break-even property. So I think even in 2024, it was a break-even property. And if 2025, since it's tougher times of a recession, I expect this to be negative cash flow. So it's not going to be the greatest deal, but I'm trying to like balance out two factors. So I know it takes at least 8 to 10 years to really stabilize an asset. And I've owned this property since 2022. And from 2022 to, I would say, a year and a half, so end of 2023, that's when I finished renovations. That's when I finished renting it out. And then from, let's say, 2024 to present day, it's focused on stabilizing. What I mean by stabilizing, I mean that getting, tenants in there, making sure that, because you're a C-class apartment complex, you're going to have a lot more repairs, HVACs break, plumbing issues, tenant turnover. So it's an old property. Plumbing's going to break, and when plumbing breaks, let's say plumbing leaks on an upper floor unit, and now you have to repair that unit, and it might leak to the lower unit. So that's a possibility as well. So you're just getting hit with a lot of CapEx, and that's why a lot of apartment investors, they eventually leave C-class apartments, because it's just not worth it for them. In C-class apartments, from what I've seen from owning two, the most value is buying it, right, fixing it up, and then you basically either refinance to pull out all your money, or you 1031 exchange it into a newer asset, like a newer B-class or A-class apartment complex. So I might go from like a 20-unit C-class apartment complex to maybe like a 5-unit B-class apartment complex, as an example. So let's just say I'm going for a 20-unit that I'm selling for, let's say, $700, and using that $700, let's say I'm buying a $700,000 5-unit apartment complex, but it's newer. So you're kind of trading up the asset class. So for me, I don't want to throw the baby out of the bathwater just yet. I want to see how the property's doing, like long term. Like I said, I don't think owning it for 3 years is long enough. But once I start hitting that 8-year to 10-year, that's what my balloons do. I think I'm really gonna look hard to see, like, how's this property been doing? Do I want to keep it, or do I want to sell it? And do I want to 1031 exchange this? Because I know, I have two options. I can sell it, pay taxes, pay depreciation recapture, and then maybe whatever money's in there, I could use it to pay off my 26-unit apartment complex. Or I could 1031 exchange it and then use it to go buy 3 new builds in Huntsville, Alabama, and go from 20 units, making, I would say on average, right now, it's about $500 per door. So if everything's rented out, it's $10K. But reality is, let's say at 75% right now, so that's $7,500. So I can sell that property and then basically trade into 3 new constructions in Huntsville, Alabama at $250K each. Because if I buy bulk, and I'll probably get a discount. So I can get 3 homes for $750 at $2,000 each, that's $6,000. But there's going to be less headache, less repairs, less capex, less involvement. So that's always the option that I have. But now I kind of see why people get started in C-class apartments, but eventually over time they will trade up to B-class or A-class, or trade up to triple net leases, because it's a lot of maintenance, it's a lot of capex, and it's hard to cash flow. I was sold the dream of crazy cash flow, and I think my 26 unit does hit that, but the 20 unit doesn't. So this would be the deal that I would sell if it makes sense. But like I said, I've only owned it for 3 years. This is the first time that I'm getting hit for recession. Like I said, my occupancy is lower, so I'm probably gonna talk to my property manager, and we're probably gonna offer move-in specials. So what's a move-in special? It might be 1 month, 2 month free. It might be just lowering the rents. It might be low security deposit. So I'm gonna talk to her about some strategies that we can do. But working for her in the past, that's what we've done in the past when I need to lease up fast. And it's the holiday season right now. It's hard to rent out in October, November, December, January. It's the holidays. People don't want to move. And why my 20 unit isn't doing as great is because they're all 1 bedroom, 1 bath. So what I learned the hard way is you typically don't want all 1 bedroom, 1 bath, because it's typically going to be for single people. It's going to be for someone younger, Gen Z, millennial, no kids, no family, maybe a significant other. And the moment they have kids, they want to upgrade to a 2-bedroom. So at that point, since my 20 unit doesn't have a 2-bedroom, you're going to leave the unit. Instead of, like, in my 26 unit, I have 13 1-bedroom, 13 2-bedroom. So if you like the community, you like the area, and you have kids, you can upgrade from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom and still stay within the same community. If I had to pick, I'd rather have something all 2-bedroom, 1 bath. That'd be my ideal. If I had a second choice, it'd be half 2-bedroom, half 1-bedroom, and my last choice would be all 1-bedroom. I actually wouldn't buy another all 1-bedroom. So that's another reason why I wouldn't, why my 20 unit is not doing as well, because there's no opportunity to upgrade the unit if they like the area. Another reason too is my 20 unit is in a downtown area of Enid, Oklahoma. It's near a stadium, and they did have a homeless issue there when I first started, where the transients would stay there. I think they offered emergency housing to homeless, so they would kind of loiter around there. Like, I had one tenant where he would pay prostitutes to come in and sleep with him, and I don't think he even paid them. I think he just was offering them room and board. And then I believe because of that, it created the bed infestation in my 20 unit, and it cost me $10,000 to fumigate the whole apartment complex. So, it's very expensive and a lot of CapEx repairs. So we'll see. Like I said, if I were to make a decision today, I would lean towards selling. But let me give this more time. Let me give it closer to 8 years to see how it does. And if it continues to perform this way, then it might be one that I sell and 1031 exchange into another asset. So we'll see. So that's all I'm saying. Like I've owned this apartment when interest rates went up. But for context, like if I had a low interest rate, because my 26 unit and my 20 unit are the same loan amount, but my 26 unit, the interest rate's 4% versus this one 6.5%. It's the only difference between $1,900 versus $2,600. So that's $700, which is significant, but I'd still be cash flow negative, $1,500. So like we said, we'll see. And this is the beauty about owning real estate long term. Like you have to reassess each property, because every day you keep your property is you're saying that you'd buy the property again. But if you don't believe you don't want to buy the property again, at that point you might need to prune your portfolio and change your process. So for me, like I said, depends how I'm feeling. I can 1031 exchanges into a B-class apartment that's smaller. I could 1031 exchanges into 3 brand new build single family homes if I want something more passive. Because with single family homes, it's easy to do mental math. Like you said, if it's rented out, most likely, and there's no major repair, which you know about, you're going to hit your numbers. Whereas an apartment, it's very variable every single month, depending on your CapEx repairs. And typically, you probably will have more turnover with apartments, especially 1 bedroom, versus like a family renting a 4 bedroom, 2 bath. So it's really a difference. And like I said, you have to constantly assess. So maybe if I determine that this isn't the deal I want to keep, then I need to sell it and then determine how I want to pivot. If I want to deal with massive renovations, then I'll 1031 change another C-class. But knowing that I'm just going to buy the C-class, fix it up, and then sell it. Or, fix it up, 1031 exchange it out of there. And knowing what I know, it's kind of funny. Like, I always get calls from my 26 unit from brokers, but I never get calls from my 20 unit. So it kind of tells me that like my 26 unit is a lot more desirable compared to my 20 unit. And it is in the secondary market as well. It's in Enid. The population's about 50K. It's about an hour and a half away from Oklahoma City. And Oklahoma City is the main metro area. So there's many factors. And it's kind of a secondary, tertiary market. So that's another risk as well. Like if you buy in secondary, tertiary markets when times are tough, people maybe don't want to live there. And another thing too is like the rents are only $500 a unit. So if something like breaks, and it will break, like a fridge, or I remember I had a tenant where I had 2 tenants, they did drugs, and they like got high and did Sharpie art all over the walls, and their security deposit was only like I think $250, and like $250 wasn't even enough to cover all the paint and the repairs I have to do on each unit. And the rents, even if I got $500 in security deposit, it might just maybe broke even. But yeah, that's the challenges of a C-class apartment complex. And what's funny is like people say during the bad times you want a C-class apartment complex because people are downgrading from single family home to A-class to B-class, B-class to C-class. If you can't afford C-class, you're going to like a mobile home or Section 8. So, but I kind of see that's getting hit too. So, interesting owning. The longer you own, the more wisdom you get. But it's kind of funny how I consume a lot of content about real estate investing, especially apartments, and no one tells it like this. So I want to share the truth with you guys. Like I said, even best case, I was making $2,000 a month at its peak, and right now, or at least this month, I'm negative $2,000. And 2024, I was probably break even. But keep in mind, I'm only on year 3. So the longer I own it, I'm hoping it does better. If it doesn't, then yeah, definitely a property I need to sell. So it's quite interesting to see that, and quite humbling. So like I said, you learn the most by learning from those who are in the trenches and learning from those in the trenches who are willing to share, because syndicators will not share this. Bigger pockets will not share this. A lot of apartment owners will not sell this. So now I know, like, the whole point of real estate isn't cash flow. The whole point of real estate is to hold it as long as possible, to have it paid off eventually, and to get a tax write-off. And my problem is that I'm not a real estate professional status. I don't qualify because I work a full-time W-2. So because of that, I can't use the losses to offset my active income. But a lot of people, they just buy an apartment to get a tax write-off and to defer taxes a few years and eventually pay the piper once you sell the property. So what a lot of people do is they buy a home, $1 million home. You do a cost segregation study so you can write off about 30%, $300K. And if you make $300,000 in income, you basically pay zero taxes. But the moment you sell your property, you have to pay depreciation recapture. So, if it takes you 10 years to sell the property, you pay depreciation recapture in 10 years. Or if you 1031 exchange it, you can 1031 exchange it into a bigger asset. And then you do another cost segregation study to then offset another $300,000 or $400,000 because you have to buy a property that's more expensive. But that one defers the capital gains recapture. So you want to refi or 1031 exchange until you die, because once you die, your kids inherit the properties and they get a stepped up basis. So that's how a lot of people play real estate. And maybe I'll play that game too. Like I said, I'll depend on my situation. If let's say in 5 years I want to sell my 20 unit, I can 1031 exchange it into a bigger apartment complex if I want to go down that route. Or if I just want to simplify, I just can go into single family homes and buy new construction in Huntsville, Alabama. So I'm upgrading the age of the home. And if I'm okay with that, then that's maybe the route I'm going to take. So anyways, hopefully you found value. Hopefully you learned from my transparency. Hopefully you learned from my pain. Hopefully you learned from my mistakes. I just try to give you guys the raw truth that I haven't heard on YouTube. And like I said, I listen to a lot of YouTube. So hopefully you learned something from that. And then, so that's my Tesla safety beep. So hopefully you learned from that. And let me know what questions you have. If you want to join my school community, if you want a Stanley Ledley insurance quote, if you want to email me, if you want to coaching, click on my link tree down below. Have all the links below. Otherwise, please like, comment, subscribe. Hope to see you next one. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.